Joining me today is Catia Soares, founder of MindMoodPsychonutrition. We first connected after the loss of my nephew through a call for collaboration. Since then, we've shared a deep commitment to healing and emotional truth. Catia, welcome to Bare Frequencies. Catia, your work is fascinating and incredibly diverse, having trained in both forensic psychology and naturopathic nutrition, and worked across everything from prisons to community care. I'm really intrigued by how these worlds merge. Can you walk us through your journey, what drew you to this path, and what moment made you realize you wanted to bring psychology and nutrition together?
Wow, Shona, I think I need a couple of hours to describe my journey.
Feel free.
All right, I'm going to try to be quite succinct about my journey. So I trained as a psychologist in Portugal back in 2010. That's when I moved to the UK. I won a European scholarship, and I did a 6-month internship in one of the most well-known sexual health charities in the UK, which is Terence Higgins Trust. I've worked in the field for about 6 years. I've done loads of work in the community. I've worked, as you mentioned, in prisons, in therapeutic communities, did a lot of outreach work. And then in 2016, yes, I thought, I want to do something else. I want to do something more, maybe retrain. I knew, that was not enough for me. I love my job. I love working in the community, in the charity sector, but I knew that I want to do something more and help people more and create more value in the world. So initially I had a thought about maybe doing a PhD in psychology, but I thought this is not going to take me anywhere, sorry. So already with a vision of having my own business, my own organization, so I could work with more people in one go. So, and work with people and projects that will be aligned with my values and the mission that I want to create in the world. And this is one of the reasons that I'm here today. So thank you once again.
No, thank you for joining us. And now that you are here, can you tell us more about MindMoodPsychonutrition? What's really at the heart of it? What makes it different from traditional therapy or nutritional approaches?
That's such a good question. So I've always wanted to create a unique project or organization or way of working with people that will encompass the mind, the body, and the spirit. So working with people holistically, because I'm passionate about psychology, about human beings, about people. So I think we are human beings that are multidimensional. So why we should just focus on physical health or mental health or emotional health separately? We should encompass everything from mental health, physical health, spirituality, lifestyle, nutrition. So that's one of the principles or the foundation of MindMoodPsychonutrition, is working holistically, the wholeness of people. Equally, what is very important for MindMoodPsychonutrition and for my project is to education and learning. So one of the areas that I'm really trying to expand and advance, and this is part of it as well, being in this podcast today, is to raise awareness, to educate, to provide learning spaces and spaces of connection and belonging where people can feel connected, right? It's quite difficult to feel connected in our society these days. So one of the things that I absolutely love, aside from one-to-one interventions, is creating and delivering talks, workshops in groups that really helps to maximize that connection and ideally, inner change and transformation. So that's the really connection, togetherness, learning, education are also core values of MindMoodPsychonutrition, aside an holistic and integrated way of looking at people, individuals. And also because I strongly felt this since I was probably 6 years old, that I had a mission in this world. I don't want to sound pretentious, but I did feel that very early age that I didn't want to stay in Portugal. I felt it was quite small to me. I love my country and I'm very proud of my roots, but I felt that I had to really move to the UK or another country to be able to fulfill that mission, to be able to really create profound and deep value in society that would hopefully last a lifetime, right? Yeah. I always feel, or what drives me is a sense of purpose and meaning, but equally leaving a legacy. It's not about being famous or being rich or having a lot of followers on social media. That doesn't mean nothing to me or very little, but it's about feeling that, the day before I die, I felt that I left legacy in my job, in my family, in my friends, and my connections. So, and I'll be, that's what creates happiness in my life. I hope that answer to your question. Yeah. I'm trying to summarize this because it's
purpose, isn't it?
Yeah, it's purpose and meaning.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's purpose. So you've worked with such a wide range of people, from addiction recovery, social care, as we mentioned earlier, those in prison systems. And I wondered, in your experience, how does someone's mental health history affect the way that they treat their body, the way they eat, how they care for themselves and treat others? Are there common patterns or challenges that you see?
I think a lot has to do with self-respect, self-love, dignity for our own lives. So if we love ourselves, if we respect ourselves, we will have a wish and motivation to look after ourselves, right? To eat well, to sleep well, to have, a positive work-life balance, to have positive, meaningful interactions, to feel that we are, leading a life of purpose and meaning. So for sure, people, they have a past of addiction or homelessness or abuse or mental health issues, that will impact or might impact the way they look after themselves. So obviously, that's not... What I'm trying to say is that sometimes it doesn't work that way. So it's just, just because you had this past, this will happen, right? This is how you're going to lead your life. But I think, it can have an influence. Obviously, there's other factors. But from my own experience as, a practitioner and a clinician and working with diverse groups of people, mainly in the community, now in private practice, I do see that correlation. But also from my personal experience and being Catia, I know, if I'm not feeling okay about myself, my mental health is a little bit low, my bucket is a bit low, it's going to be so much harder for me to make healthier choices, right? About how I eat, about how I sleep, about how I spend my time, who do I spend my time with. So mental health is one of the pillars of our health, happiness, and well-being. So it's just so important to keep ourselves in check every day. So mental health is about prevention, is about a daily muscle that we really need to work and polish. So I think, when we think about physical health, and we have a goal like going to the gym and gain muscle mass or weight loss, we're very motivated, very prone to okay, this needs to be a consistent practice, consistent exercise. But sometimes we forget that it's exactly the same thing with mental health. That our mental health, we all have mental health. So it is a daily muscle. So if you want to have optimal mental health, you need to work on it every day, right? And I think this is something that also embodies the work that I do, and something that I always like to transmit and communicate to anyone that I work with, is that work on it every day. Have this ability to identify, to be aware of your emotions, your feelings, your thoughts, what helps you to keep you grounded, to keep you calm and safe.
I love the fact that you said everyone has mental health. That really struck me. And I think it's awareness, isn't it? It is self-awareness.
Absolutely.
It's all self-awareness. There's a growing awareness that our gut and our brain and our emotional state are all talking to each other. And I'll be honest, I'm still very, very new to this territory. But I'm learning, and I'm noticing how certain foods affect my mood and my body. Do you think more people are beginning to recognize this connection?
I think so. I think we are in a wave of change, in a wave of awakening and more awareness about the impact of our lifestyle, what we eat, how that can impact our mental health and emotional health. There's so much talk about gut health and gut-brain connection, and the field of nutritional psychology, which I have become quite fond because that's one of my specialities as a nutritional therapist, is the field of nutritional psychiatry and nutritional psychology. So, and I've observed this with lots of clients that I worked in the community to start with, that most of them had really poor nutrition, and then how much that impacted their emotions and feelings, their behaviors. So, and I've seen this in myself, right? I know if I'm not having an awesome food diet, my ability, as an example, to overface challenges or obstacles, my ability to manage stress or anxiety is going to be much, much more low. It's like, think that you have a bucket full of tools, full of emotional resilience tools. And if that bucket is not nourished with the right foods or good quality sleep, as an example, of exercise or meaningful connections, your ability to overcome adversities and challenges is going to be much, much, much harder. So yes, I think there's a massive change, not only in the UK, but worldwide. But I still feel that, there's much more that we need to learn about, much more than we need to do. So I think it's very important to continue to talk about this. And thank you for asking these questions. I think it's really relevant.
How do you help and guide someone who feels disconnected from their body to begin to hear this conversation? I remember for myself, it was just one day I thought, I've had enough of this eating rubbish. And I think because I'm a mum as well, for Jake, it was, I really need to start looking after myself better and my son, So for those who might be watching, who's just stepping into it and learning how to listen, how do you help and guide someone?
I think I'll say, this is just, there's no formulas. There's no right or wrong. I work with the individual that is in front of me. So each person is unique. But I'll say that helps quite a lot to practice mindfulness, right? Practice awareness, noticing, right? Noticing, once again, your emotions, your feelings, your bodily sensations. What makes you feel good and what doesn't make you feel good, right? How much maybe your motivation levels are impacted, your sleep, your ability to exercise, your ability to manage stress or anxiety or difficult emotions is about really, I think you mentioned a very important point at the beginning, is being awakened to life, being awakened to your body, to your mental health, to your emotional makeup. I think lots of us are on autopilot, on flight mode. We lead such a busy lives, and the world, the way it's going is not made for slowing down, to practice mindfulness and to be awakened. And I think for me, that's been one of, the biggest challenge for me, but also the most transformative steps in my life, because I'm an overachiever by nature, perfectionist. I've always had a quite busy life because I like to be involved in different projects, and that's my nature. I accept it. I'm not going against it. But it's about also to, being aware and noticing when this is a bit too much, because we all have, our bucket, right? Yes. And the bucket might spill at some time. So we have to be really mindful, being aware, and living the present moment as much as we can, right? Not living the past, not living the future. I think that's the only way you will be able to connect yourself if you feel overwhelmed or lost, is to slow down, is to notice, to pay attention, to become fully awake and fully aware, right? Not only to pleasant and nice sensations or feelings like dopamine driven. We also live in this dopamine society, a quick, immediate gratification, but also to even pay attention to your pain and what feels uncomfortable. That's so important that you also accept, get connected, pay attention, notice, about those uncomfortable feelings is having this raised or increased, as I said, physical, emotional awareness.
Thank you. It's fascinating, Catia. I could listen to you for hours.
Okay.
We often talk about transformation, not quick fixes, but real rooted change. And from your experience, when someone feels stuck or overwhelmed, what's the very first step they need to take to begin that journey?
Oh, I love what you're saying about, big and deeper transformation, not quick fixes. Yeah. That was something else that I've really learned and accepted in my own journey. I've learned a lot to be patient. And as someone that by nature is a goer, I have no patience. Well, I used to. Now I have patience. It's something that you polish. But anyway, going back to your question. Once again, there's no formulas. There's no right or wrong, right? But I think perhaps, or maybe the first step is that talk about it. Talk to someone that you love. It doesn't have to be straight away a psychologist or a therapist, but talk to someone that you trust, right? Open up. Be vulnerable. I'm struggling. I'm challenging. I don't know what to do. I feel stuck. I feel overwhelmed. That can really, soothe your nervous system. And once again, makes you feel connected with your own emotions, makes you feel validated, right? There's something about pain or sufferance that is universal to our condition as human beings, is inherent to our nature. And I think the more we connect with others, the more it feels less lonely. Because it's quite, I think this happens a lot and it's quite easy. And this happened with myself. When I've been in pain or in sufferance, I felt this is just, oh gosh, it feels just no one else can ever understand. This is all about me. Right? We really focus on ourselves, and there's no wrong about this, but I think talking about it and let it all out, it helps to process and it will help you to feel more motivated, more encouraged, more hopeful, hopefully, because you are sharing your vulnerability with someone else that will be a listening heart and a listening ear.
What about if you have that fear of being vulnerable? And for me especially, there's times I think people can't deal with this. They don't want to talk about it. It's something that I have to do on my own. And I've felt, especially since losing my nephew last year, that when I did open up or speak to someone about it, I noticed there was certain people came forward, but there's a lot of people that stepped away. And I found that I found it quite challenging, because I thought, maybe I'm too much, or maybe, people can't meet me in this capacity. And I think I've been on my own healing journey over the past few years, and losing my nephew back in November, it flipped everything for me. It changed the way I see mental health, especially my own, grief, healing, life, just everything. So I wanted to ask, has there been a moment or personal experience in your work or life that shifted the way you understand mental health or healing? Something that stayed with you or maybe even changed you?
Absolutely. I think this was pivotal in my life. Back in 2019, I had a complete mental breakdown. I eventually got diagnosed with PTSD. I had panic attacks, severe anxiety, really anxious and paranoid thoughts, insomnia, all sorts. I felt that, everyday life was like a war zone for over a year. And eventually happened. And I'll never forget, this was probably September 2019. I was about to finish my degree in nutritional therapy. And things were getting a bit too much for many months. But I kept on going because I'm a goer by nature. So I thought I can handle it, I can have a 40-hour job as a psychologist in the community, working with the most vulnerable people in the country. I was working for this pilot research action project funded by the National Lottery. And we worked with the most difficult cases in the country. So it's a job that I really loved, but also left me with some scars. But I see that as a positive thing. I don't see that as a negative thing. But going back to the question, so I remember that day in September when, after another incident, I just couldn't take it. An incident with a client. I just couldn't take it. I just rang my manager and said, I'm going to the GP tomorrow and I'm going to get signed off and I don't know when I'm going to be back to work. I was very much burned out. But as I said, eventually I went to a psychotherapist and he said that, Catia, you clearly are with PTSD, or what we call in the sector compassion fatigue and vicarious trauma, when you are exposed and you face, trauma in others for years and years and years and years, which sadly is very common in the sector. So what I've learned from it is we are not invincible. I thought at times that I was invincible. Oh, I can handle it. Right. And also as a psychologist, I feel there's sometimes this perception or still stigma that, you're a psychologist. Mm-hmm. How can you get anxious? Mm-hmm. How can you have a mental breakdown? Mm-hmm. Well, you should have the tools and the techniques to overcome everything, because this is your job. This is what you support people with. So I was also a victim of that own stigma. Wow. So because of that, I felt that I need to keep going, because, otherwise, I'm fake, How can I call myself a psychologist when I'm breaking down, right? I cannot allow myself to happen, and eventually happened because it had to happen, mm-hmm. right? So first thing is that you are not invincible, right? You will break down. You will not cope. You have your own boundaries and your own limits, and therefore, your life, going back to the dignity of life, is very precious.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I find it fascinating. I find it fascinating and deeply eye-opening, because I think that many people assume, that mental health struggles only come from trauma and substance abuse or chaotic upbringings, But your story is that even someone thriving professionally who's outwardly holding it all together can quietly unravel from the inside too. I find it fascinating.
Thank you so much.
I really do. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
It really challenges the stereotypes. That really challenges the stereotypes and reminds us, just like what you said, how precious life is and how vulnerable we all are.
Yeah.
And how, and no matter how strong or capable we seem to be, we're only human.
Exactly, we're only human and we're not invincible. And, I'm very grateful and I'm very fortunate to grow up in such a lovely, supporting, loving, kind family, right? To the eyes of everyone, I had a quite happy childhood, which I think I had, But I also had my challenges growing up and gone through a few things. So, as you said, you don't have to have a past of addiction or trauma to experience pain or sufferance, right? It is inherent of human condition. So equally, how can you compare pain or levels of pain? Or how can you say that someone suffered more than you? I think it's a very subjective experience. Yes, it's awful if someone, has been abused or has been homeless or has been in criminal justice system or has a past of addiction, right? We call it those, if we go back to, psychological language, the big traumas, the big T's, as Gabor Mate says. But, our life on a lots of, day-to-day basis, we are exposed or we are suffering from the small T's, the small traumas. But not everything is also a traumatic event. But for sure there's pain and suffering and challenges, and everyone has those. I had them. And also one of the biggest lessons about that experience is that, it's okay to talk about your struggles and your difficulties. It's okay to be vulnerable and accept that vulnerability. So also I wanted to highlight, if that's okay, going back to one of your questions about fear of becoming vulnerable or talking to someone about your mental health. Yes, I get that, and I agree that for a lot of people will be very, very difficult, right? Obviously, I'm a bit biased because I'm a psychologist, not only, but I've worked a lot on my mental health, so I became very vocal about mental health overall. I'm an advocate for mental health. So, but maybe for those that are listening and people that are in fear, maybe, the next step will be just going out and engaging the community. That's maybe another way to start the process, right? Maybe engage in a hobby, something that you're passionate about, a creative outlet. They might also bring a lot of fear, I understand, but if you don't feel that you're not able or you don't have the support system, because I think that's very important. Not everyone has a good listening ear and heart. A friend or a family, lots of us are estranged from families and friends, and we have to take that into account. But maybe by going into the community or doing things that you love, it will initiate that process. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. And I think for the last couple of years, I've been in solitude, because I just felt that I needed to step away and do the inner work. But I'm ready to be in the community again. I need it, I need to be connected again. I need to meet new people. I need to talk about things.
I love it.
I need to talk about things.
We need people like you.
I need to talk about things, and it's, there's no shame, absolutely no shame in it whatsoever. And I think the bravest thing you can do is speak.
Yes, absolutely.
I think it's the bravest step that you can take.
Equally, if you don't face your fears, if you don't challenge yourself, how can you change? How can you do things differently?
Very true.
Right? It's also about understanding, what your fear is about. What are the losses and the gains, right? Fear, we understand that fear is a very important emotion. It plays its role. But it's also have the understanding and maybe the commitment at some stage in your life, because maybe something big has to happen, or you need to have that deeper, inner, profound realization that, the way that I'm living is just sickens me to the bone, and I have to change, and I have to face this fear, right? It will be really uncomfortable in the beginning or at times, but there's no other way. And you can make that decisions. I always say that, we can always make decisions about our lives. There's always options and alternatives. You can make decisions to stay where you are, and that's fine. I respect that. But also you can make the decision to do things differently, to try, to challenge yourself, to work on yourself, whatever that means to you.
It's a choice, isn't it? A choice. Yeah. And again, self-awareness comes into it hugely.
I believe we're never choiceless. We think we are, but I don't think we are.
With so much misinformation around health and wellness these days, it can feel overwhelming to know where to turn. For example, I'm huge on my skincare products at the moment, but I always do a lot of research to make sure I'm choosing what's right for me. But there are times when I buy, it just doesn't work for my skin, and I have to try something else. And I've found it's the same with health and wellness. It's often about trial and error. So what works for one person doesn't always work for another, and it takes time to figure out what truly resonates. So from your perspective, how do you keep your work rooted in truth and authenticity? And what's your process for staying true to who and what you are?
This is a big question. I think what helps me to feel genuine and truth and authentic is thinking about what my core values are and what is important to me, how I want to lead my life, how do I want to work with people, how do I want to create value in other people's lives and in society. So I always say to my clients that in doubt of what choices to make, how to behave, go back to your framework of core values. If integrity, honesty, and creativity, as an example, are part of your core values, it will help you to guide and make decisions. Obviously, this is not that simple because sometimes we have to go against our core values, right? Ideally, this is how we would make choices and behave, but, life is complex at times. So, and I've had to make really difficult choices in my life that were against my values, but at the time that was the most helpful and most difficult choice. And I do ask myself a lot of times, I think more and more, it's been a learning process about what are the, deep rooted reasons or the reasons behind making certain choices or, choosing A instead of B, right? Is this the right for me? Is this the right for the people that I work? Does this resonate? What are the true reasons behind it? Sometimes, because sometimes we make decisions or operate based on fear, as an example, based on keeping reputation, status, power, money, right? So I think it's important to really question your choices and really reflect about what are the reasons why you're doing certain things or you're making certain choices that'll bring you closer to your true self or your authentic self, whatever that means. But as I said, sometimes it is hard, right? It is hard.
At the heart of everything, I truly believe that everything comes down to mindset and awareness. I think that's the essence. And without that, mental health can be really terrifying. I know it was for me. I think I began my journey into self-discovery about six or 7 years ago. And a pivotal part of that was working with an electronic producer from the music industry. He was a legendary figure in experimental music, and I always like to credit him. So big up DJ Crust, if you're watching. I think he played such a crucial role in helping me to begin to recognize and dismantle deep-rooted patterns within myself. And through that process, I began to understand what was truly holding me back. But everything shifted for me when my son Jake was attacked 2 years ago on his way home from school. And I think that experience and the stress and the fear and the rage and the helplessness, it pushed me to the edge. I mean, I was on my own and I had to deal with all this. I'd already been doing the work, but this had plunged me into a different kind of depth. And I felt like the world had stopped. Anxiety moved in, even more so. Fear became constant. Anger had nowhere to go. And they became my daily companions 24/7. And then obviously the grief in November. And that just flipped everything upside down, inside out, back to front. So I guess my question is this: for someone who feels completely lost, overwhelmed, stuck in survival mode, fight or flight, which I was in for most of my life, what's the very first step they can take? And how do they begin to shift towards healing? And what does that moment of change look like, even if it's just a flicker?
First of all, thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing me to share it with you.
No, your life story is just so beautiful.
Thank you, Catia.
It's been a pleasure, to be able to meet you and discover you, I'll say. Yeah, I like the word discovery.
I like that word too.
Yeah.
I think I'm finally just discovering myself at 54. Oh, there you are.
It's an ongoing process, right? It never finishes. Well, trying to go back to your question is another big question. Many big questions today, Shona. You're really putting me a test.
But these are questions that we all need answers to anyway.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember the first time that I read your questions. I have to mention this. They really touched me.
Oh, thank you.
The level of depth and authenticity. And the fact that you spend so much time researching about me and my life, every little detail, I thought, oh my God, wow. I felt really honored and privileged because there are some questions actually, it felt like I was seeing myself.
Oh, that's nice. That's how I want.
I could picture it myself. So thank you for that. I'm really grateful.
Oh, thank you. So let's go back to Portugal, to little Catia, where the lemon and persimmon trees danced in the breeze and the ocean whispered at the edge of the horizon just beyond your bedroom window, where your grandmother's rich Mediterranean flavours filled the air, where time felt much slower and softer. I'm just painting that picture and I can almost taste your grandmother's cooking.
It's delicious. Well, it was delicious, yeah.
I can imagine. What was it like for you growing up in all that beauty as an only child, surrounded by older cousins, but without siblings of your own? Do you think those settings nurtured your imagination, your independence, and your inner world?
I can picture that in my head, yeah. Very good memories, yeah. Unfortunately, my grandma is no longer, between us. She passed away last year.
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but yeah, she's alive.
She's still with you?
Yeah.
Yes, of course.
Yes. I say this a lot, that I feel very grateful for growing up in such a lovely country, very loving and supporting family upbringing. I feel very privileged, yeah. And I think growing up in such a beauty or authenticity, if that makes sense, because, as an example, the quality of food is slightly better than the UK, I'm sorry. The farmers markets, you get everything fresh. My grandma used to have, we used to have the lemon tree and the persimmon tree, and growing fruits and vegetables. Used to have chickens, so I grew up surrounded by chickens and also pets and a little garden. Yeah, family produced, let's put it that way. So starting with the food, everything felt more authentic, and the weather. You cannot lie about this. It's just, it makes you feel in a different way, right? I have this very loving memory of having my birthday parties, because I was born on 29th of March. And in Portugal back then, now with climate change, everything is different, but it was already super hot. And I remember having my birthday parties outside in our backyard full of children and lovely homemade food. So that's such a good memory, always with a lemon tree and the persimmon tree as well. So they are still there, the persimmon tree, not the lemon tree anymore. But all right, it's a very difficult question to answer, because I feel that I'm just going on a tangent, because there's just so many memories, coming
beautiful.
up right now. But yeah, for sure, living in that environment, in that Mediterranean culture, where also family plays a big role, food and being together and being connected, and everything is slightly at a slower pace. Because, I didn't live far away from the sea. The local beach was about 30 to 40 minutes. So going to the beach, even in the winter for a walk, is something that people do. So, or going for coffee or a beer near the beach after work. So this is something that we do. So it for sure foster my creativity, my independence. I'm someone that is still quite a little child in many ways. I have a very childish part of myself, and also I'm very optimistic and I dream a lot, but I love have dreams. You know, who are you without dreams? So for sure, I feel that, you know, put me in already in a good path, if that exists, of eventually what I've turned up into my career and my hobbies, because I love, you know, I used to be a dancer. I love everything that's related with arts, music, and emotional expression. I write poetry. I used to write short stories. So that artistic part of myself, I think it was really deep-rooted in the environment. Also because one side of my family, my mom's side, they're all artists in one way or another, poets or musicians, dancers. My mom used to be a dancer as well.
Amazing.
My grandma, you know, she used to be a music teacher. My grandpa, a TV presenter, radio presenter, and writer. So obviously that played a massive role, and, you know, they always fostered this artistic side in me, and I feel very grateful for having this family background. Interesting enough, and I would like to share this, because something that I still at times battle with is the fact that at the same time I feel very privileged, and I felt, this is about privilege, what I wanted to talk about. I hope this makes sense, you know, bringing up this topic. But
absolutely,
I feel very grateful for, you know, the family that I grew up with, what I was exposed. But at times I feel that I was very privileged, but in a negative way that brought me a lot of guilt and at times of shame.
Okay.
Of, you know, maybe I felt that I had more opportunities than someone else that didn't have this opportunity.
Okay.
And it took me a long time to accept that this is equally not my fault, right? That I had this privilege, or I had this opportunity to, you know, being born in this family, being born in this background. Yeah.
I understand that, because I think doing this podcast as well, I wanted to give back to the community, you know, to help, to bring awareness, you know, for perhaps, you know, these young people out there that don't have a voice or a platform, or so I can totally, that really resonates with me.
Thank you. I hope that it's okay to bring this up. It just felt very organic, and I felt that it's important to talk about this. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I'm glad you did. Thank you for sharing that. Absolutely. It's really interesting as well when you talk about chickens and, you know, vegetable gardens and stuff, because I remember we had it, my grandfather grew up in the west coast of Scotland, and we didn't have the sunshine, but we had the beach. I mean,
they're gorgeous.
The ocean was 30 minutes. No, sorry. The ocean was 10 minutes from where I live. I live 30 minutes from central Scotland, but I'm right on the coast. And my grandfather had a wee vegetable garden as well, and it was organic before organic was even mentioned, you know. And they flipped roles at home, you know. My grandmother worked in the fields. She went out picking potatoes, and my grandfather, he was the cook. So, you know, it was just, I remember that even though it was miserable, I mean, the weather in Scotland is like grey 365 days a year. I think that's why everybody's so miserable. That's why I left it, you know. So just painting that picture, you know, talking about your own life, it kind of took me back there. You say you dance and write poetry.
Yes.
Mum was a dancer. Dance was such a huge part of your life. It wasn't just practice. It's a way of being. You moved through the world with a rhythm in your soul. I love that.
Oh,
yes.
That sounds so poetic.
But that's what it is, isn't it? That's just, you move through the world with rhythm in your soul. It's from such a young age. Music's medicine. It's not just a passion or a job. It's, you know, it's ancestral, it's instinctual. And as an artist, you know, when I do perform my DJ sets, I find that they're very raw and militant and no nonsense, but always soulful. And I feel that for me, it's a release and it's a purging of everything that I've carried in my life, you know, the pain and the hurt and the anger. But when I produce, it's a different frequency, and I tend to go inwards. And that's when I feel most connected to the core of who I really am. Vulnerable, tender, present, and I've tried so much to match that energy when I'm playing, but it never happens. I always end up going back to I think it's the core of who I am. So I think there's a duality in that, two sides of the same truth. And I wonder if this is the same for you with dancing and writing, not just the things you did, but the things that you are. And do you still feel that dance, and the poet quietly moving within you?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And I think they'll always be parts of me, right? Because they are me.
Who you
so
are.
they're not separate of me.
Right.
Although I'm not on stage anymore, they leave with me. They are with me. I still try to go and see dance shows very often, as much as I can. I always say that Sadler's Wells in London is my second home. I'm always there.
Amazing.
When it's your core essence and it's something that makes you feel happy and, joyful and there's a passion, it will never fade away.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes there'll be certain periods in your life that they will be stronger. Like with poetry, I'm in a hiatus at the moment. I haven't written anything for a good couple of months, but I know we'll be back when it's the right time. And actually it's coming back, which I'm very happy because I went to a poetry jam the other day and I didn't perform. I was just, okay, I'm going and I'm just going to see people. And then immediately on that night, on the way back home, I wrote a poem. So it's always with you. It's just about you.
It's the timing, isn't it?
Yeah, refreshing, renewing, when is the right time. And sometimes it's just not, it just doesn't flow, it just doesn't come. And you also kind of accept it that there'll be times that you're more prolific. Let's put it that way. It comes in waves, comes and goes. So, but yeah, is part of me like it's part of you. You'll never go away. You can't be someone else. You can't be in another way. Your being cannot be in another way. You can't manifest in another way. That will be, if you do that, will be like you're repressing.
That's right.
Right, as
who you are.
Who you are. Right.
Exactly.
You'll not be authentic. Yeah.
I think right now, for me as well, like what you say, everything's timing. And I mean, producing and writing music is what I love doing. But because of, the events over the last 6 months, that's on hold. I have to I just can't get into that creative producing mindset at the minute, and this podcast is my way. It's the next step to move forward, if that makes sense. I have to channel this and talk about this, what's happened, and before I can get back into that mindset of being a producer, to get back in the studio. And I think the plan was as well, in the autumn time, I was looking to start an 8-track album of my earlier, upbringings, my earlier memories as a young girl in the west coast of Scotland. But that's going to have to go on hold just now because I have this anger and this hurt and this pain that I need to channel. And I know when the time's right that there's going to be one seriously dark EP album is going to come from this.
I can't wait.
Creativity was part of the fabric of your home. It was simple, it was soulful and ever present. Your grandmother was a music teacher, your uncle was a singer, and your grandfather wrote poetry and lyrics. Wow, that's a team, isn't it? I mean, my goodness. Yes. It surrounded you, quietly shaping your world that you grew up in. Did you feel creative? Did you feel the creative current then? Or was it just your normal? I think that kind of reflects back in the question that I asked you earlier, when you said about it wasn't until later when you started studying psychology that you felt that you became aware of that privilege. So I think maybe when I'm asking you, was that just your normal, the way life was like air? And at what age did you begin to realize that you were inside something so rare and beautiful? I mean, that's...
Thank you.
That just wasn't a family, but a constellation of artists gently imprinting on your spirit. How do you think those early surroundings shaped the way you felt and moved through the world?
I was born creative.
So,
There's no other way around it. So how can I not be creative? Yeah. The likelihood of not being creative or wanting to be creative or engaging in creativity will be very unlikely. So, yeah. So that, creativity flows organically in me as part of my instance nature. Like you, I feel the most connected, the most myself when I'm creating, right? When I'm writing poetry, when I'm dancing, when now professionally, when I'm creating workshops, talks, courses, right? I think I mentioned before, I'm quite of an optimistic dreamer, little child. So I think it helped me to see the world or understand or navigate through the world with a very optimistic view of life, of people. I have a lot of faith and hope in people overall. And a big ability to forgive, to love, to care for, to tolerate, to be patient. And I think if I probably would have grow up in another environment, maybe this will be different. Well, I'm not sure, but I think it might have looked different. Yeah. But I'm very happy that, I can see the world in such a positive light. I think it's in today's society is quite a quality or a skill, whatever you want to call it. Because, sometimes you wake up and the news are just all so horrible and bad and everything is so grim. So I think it's not like having toxic positivity, which is a term that we much more encounter these days, and in everyone's narrative or discourse. It's not about being it's not about acknowledging that you have challenges or pain. I'm not minimizing that in my own human experience or someone else's, but I think have faith, hope, and courage, I think, are key ingredients for you to become resilient and to navigate through life. Yeah, that's how I see it.
I've always had faith and hope, and I think it's something that I do carry, but I always had faith and hope for the wrong people in my life. So you're an Aries.
Yes.
I'm a Sagittarius, and we both have that fire energy.
Powerful combo.
So we're definitely on the same frequency there. And that energy is super, super powerful. And I have become very aware of how mine moves, especially after, several burnouts. I think that passion, obsession, and sheer determination is a gift, but it can burn hot and fast. And I'm learning to keep it in check when it gets too intense. It's hard to tame. Where do you think that fire burns brightest these days for you? And where does it burn out quickest, or have you found that balance?
I so resonate with what you're saying. I'm into astrology.
Oh, are you?
Oh,
That's
yes.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I totally identify with Aries completely, with this fire, this sheer determination.
No stopping us.
I think it's about, learning how to use it to your own benefit, and sometimes soften it up when it needs to be softened, right? Because it can lead you to burnout, as an example. So, the first part of the question, I feel that that flame is much needed, or that full, when I'm delivering workshops, as an example, talking to a big group of people, right?
Absolutely.
It's so important as well to keep me determined and motivated to the things that I want to do, right? So it's great to have this crazy, bold, big, bright, flame, that it seems that it just never ends, right? It's just incredible. Sometimes it feels like it's restless at times. Like, people ask me, where'd you get so much energy? Sometimes I don't know how to answer. It's just me. I don't know myself in another way. But, once again, it is about tame it, or learning how to tame it or soften it or bring a bit more balance into it. And I've learned throughout the years and through my personal experience, what I've shared with you before, having my mental breakdown and several burnouts, back in 2019, it wasn't the first burnout. So, and I really have to pay attention a lot to this because otherwise it's very difficult to go on the other side of, I am prone to overdo, overcommit, right? Because of this restless, crazy, beautiful flame. So I've learned a lot, and I'm learning still a lot about, once again, going back to being aware, paying attention, noticing, oh, Catia, you're stretching yourself a bit too much. You need to take a step back. You need to maybe rest a bit more, relax a bit more, say no, right? So you can recover. And I feel also with the age, because naturally our metabolism slows down, right? Everything starts slowing down. I can feel the difference that I need much more time to recover than before, right? I was like, how can I do this before? I can't do that at the same level. And that's fine, because that's part of your process of, growing and, aging, which is fine. But I think I'm much more aware about how important for me to be in check with myself every day, to not get the negative consequences of this flame.
So I read that you didn't really cook until you were 18.
That's true.
There's hope for me yet. And now you batch cook, you prep on weekends and bring flavours from across continents, and always with that side signature salad. I love that. Do you think the way you approach food now reflects how you've come to care for yourself?
Yes. I need to answer to the first part. Yes, I didn't know how to cook. I'll tell you why. Because my grandma, she was the cook, and no one was allowed to step into a territory. So my grandma, she worked prior, but the latest years of her life, she was pretty much looking after me and the family. So cooking is one of our responsibilities. So not even my mum will be allowed to cook. Very, very, little. So I didn't know how to cook. But then I went to university. So living alone for the first time, of course, you need to know how to cook. You need to learn. So, and I had to learn. And slowly I start finding some enjoyment in cooking. I'm a very practical cook. I don't like to spend a lot of time in the kitchen. It's all about shortcuts. Quick and easy, nutritious meals, batch cooking, because I don't like to get home after work. This is me. And then spending 1 hour cooking.
Absolutely.
I like to have food that is prepared and different types of ingredients. They are, already present. They're accessible to put together some quick and nice salads, as an example. Or make a quick soup. So I do a lot of batch cooking on Sundays because it helps me to prepare the week, to put me in the right mindset, and also it helps me to make healthier choices throughout the week. If I have an empty fridge, and like someone else, you might grab that takeaway or make, the likelihood of making unhealthier choices is higher. So you will never see an empty fridge in my house. Never, because also this is the way I grew up. In a Portuguese house, there is never an empty fridge. There's always abundance food, right? So that's how I grew up. I don't know. I panic if I have an empty fridge. I always need to have boiled eggs, salads, some tin or canned sardines. So if I cannot be bothered, to be honest, I know I have healthy ingredients to put together a lovely salad that takes me 10 minutes. So
something quick.
Yeah, something quick. So for sure, part of that self-love, self-respect process of inner transformation is very much related about how I look after my body. And I initiated this process many years ago already. Obviously, I once again, I have the privilege of growing up in Portugal. So you start with a very good foundation in terms of nutritional awareness and education, right? Because it's completely different from countries like the UK, when the diet is mainly based on a Western diet, quite highly processed. So, and then I start developing even more interest about food. I've always been interested about food and nutrition. I love food. Food for me is a hobby, is a passion. You know, I'm the friend that my friends will ask for recommendations. I will travel for an hour or more to, you know, try a different cuisine or coffee shop. You know, it's a lifestyle, it's a hobby.
And rightly so. I think that's... So
this has developed, and then eventually when I started studying nutritional therapy in 2016, obviously I became even more aware of, you know, the healing power of foods, of certain foods. So yes, that encompasses all that movement of self transformation, of, you know, human revolution.
I think myself, I've been dipping into these HelloFresh boxes, and I know, you know, they're really great because everything comes measured, and I've tried to get into the whole cooking thing in the past, but I'm just, with ingredients and the amounts, I'm rubbish.
That can be really, you know, important and an easy step to help people easing themselves into cooking, or, you know, nutritious foods. Like for me, that will never work. I'm very honest. I hate to follow instructions. I'm like a throw in everything bowl kind of person, recipes, mixing different ingredients. That's what I like. Everything. That's why I don't know how to bake, and I'm sorry, it might sound very disappointing to all of you, but I don't think I'll ever be able to bake, because baking is such a science. You need to have the exact measurements, right? Like you know, cooking is a science, is an art, but even more baking. And I'm sorry, I just don't have the patience for it. I've tried.
See, that's really interesting, because I find that cooking in itself, I feel that I've tried that whole just chucking everything in, and it's been an absolute disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. So to have these wee portions, you know, everything kind of weighed out for me, really works for me.
But we're all different, right? And that's the beauty. I know, you know, I've tried, it doesn't work. Why should I just insist with it, you know? The other way is what works for me. But it's in your
DNA, you know, you have your grandmother's DNA, exactly. So it's natural for you. I'm west coast of Scotland, and it just hasn't happened for me. It just hasn't worked. It really hasn't. Thank you for that, Catia. I want to talk to you about love.
Ooh, juicy topic.
Love. Okay, here we go. So the longest relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. You wrote something that really stayed with me, and you said that ourselves is the most important and challenging relationship of all.
Oh yes.
And that gave me goosebumps. So you've worked across psychology, nutrition, writing, and performance, all spaces that require holding space for others. For me, I think that's one of the hardest things, turning the same compassion I have for others inward. And I'm still learning every day. But I also remember you once wrote, love will always be worth pursuing, no matter what. And that is truly beautiful. So my question to you is, how have you learned to hold space for yourself? What roles does self-love play in your personal and professional life? And in a world that often celebrates productivity and achievement, how do you find the balance between doing and being?
Gosh, so much, yeah.
That's about 5 questions in there.
I know, so much juice.
Let's go. I'm so excited to hear what you're going to say.
I resonate with you when you say it's so hard to be compassionate towards yourself and hold the space for you. It is still a learning process for me, as become better and better. Like I said before, I think I have this infinite capacity or ability to love and to look after other people and to forgive and to tolerate. And sometimes I've been really harsh on myself. I've been really highly judgmental and critical. I have perfectionist traits, so that explains a lot. But I really learned a lot how to soften up once again and balance that voice, right? And bringing up and giving a voice a bit more to the self-compassion, part of myself. A lot through, obviously, therapy, many years of therapy, but a lot, and mainly with my spiritual practice. I've been a Buddhist since 2018, and that has been life-changing, let's put it that way. I grew up in a Catholic family like a lot of people in Portugal, but I always felt that something wasn't right, and I was looking for answers, right? Until I found this practice back in 2010. It was introduced by one of my best friends, childhood friend, but I didn't really did anything with it until I made this very firm decision that I really wanted to make a commitment to my spiritual self. And then I start practicing committedly, as I say, Buddhism. There's school of Buddhism which comes from the Japan in 13th century, which is called Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism. And it's been, revolutionary, that's the word. And that learning about self-compassion and about self-love and, really relating to myself in a loving and kind way has come a lot from Buddhism, from my practice, because that's one of the principles of the practice, is one of the things that we learn. So, and a lot, of course, about, personal experience, who hasn't had a breakup or, pain through love. So I'm generally interested in love in relationships. That's a topic that I really like to explore, to dive in deeper, to experiment. So I've learned a few things through those experiences. But I feel that, I am the most comfortable with myself that I probably have been at 38 years old. And I'm glad that I had those experiences. And also equally, I'm glad that I have this practice with me side by side every single day to really polish and cultivate this relationship with myself. So if I don't like myself, how can I create value in society? How can I help others? That doesn't make any sense. It's like so confusing and ambiguous. You're contradicting yourself. It doesn't mean that, you don't have areas that you would like to change or develop or polish. We're not perfect. We're not meant to be. That's not what I'm saying. But you really need to hold yourself with high regard. You need to have, positive self-esteem and self-worth. You need to know your value. More than knowing, you need to believe that you are a person of worth, right? And despite challenges in life or mistakes or helpful decisions that you might make, you are ultimately, and that's the answer, is a person of worth. So, and this has been really, really important for me. Yeah.
I think when you mentioned the whole Buddhist thing, you're much more, what's the word I'm looking for? You study it much deeper than what I am. And my best friend, I've known her for 9-10 years, and she's originally from North Thailand, Chiang Mai. And where it's more for me about just being in the presence of the temples. I'm not strict, so I don't really know as much as what you do, so it's more just about me. If I'm feeling I need to go somewhere just to switch off and just to be present, then I'll go to the temple, know, or... but, they say the longest relationship that we'll ever have is with ourselves. Would you say that you're a good partner to yourself? And what kind of love language do you think your younger self would have appreciated most from the current you?
I think I have become a good partner. I haven't been a good partner lots of times, but I learned how to become. So it's still an ongoing learning process. But like I said before, I feel that I'm in a good space. I feel that I can be, and I can become even more the good partner. Yeah. like we have to endure with ourselves, right? We have to live with ourselves for the rest of our lives. So I really have to become the best person that I can be, right? And this is the most important thing, right? It's the most important thing. I think my younger self would have really benefited from truth and authenticity and honesty. You say, you do it. So I'm talking about people in previous relationships. So, or the importance, once again, of prioritizing that relationship with yourself, of not overgiving or not being overpresent, of forgetting yourself in relationships. And I feel that one of my challenges in relationships was that I merged with someone else and I forgot myself. I forgot that I existed, because I really wanted to give love and be love, and I forgot myself. And I've learned the hard way that's not the way for love or for what we call a healthy relationship. That's not sustainable. So I would have also said that to my younger self, that you still have to prioritize yourself. You still have to be with yourself. You still have to make yourself important. Yeah.
I think looking back, over the last, few years, since I separated back about 7 or 8 years ago, I had to step away from the whole dating thing, because I knew I needed to love myself first and get to know me as a person. And I think the last couple of years I've been in solitude, and it's been the best teacher, for me personally. And just understanding myself and the patterns and why, I'm making these same mistakes. So for the last couple of years, I've been away from that, and I'm starting to understand why I'm being attached to certain types of characters, unsavory characters, as my father. But I think we're all broken. I think we're all broken to an extent. And I remember my daughter saying to me one day, she says, "Mum, stop trying to fix everyone." That's what she says to me. She says, "Look after you. Put you first."
Yeah, that goes back to the importance of you being your best partner and prioritizing the relationship with yourself, first and foremost. And that's not about being selfish, because that will be a foundation of, a healthy, positive relationship. Not only romantic relationship, but family relationships, friendships, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Right.
So for some, love has to be big and dramatic, loud declarations, grand gestures. But for me, it doesn't have to be that way. I believe it's quiet. I believe it's tender. I believe it's kind. And I think it's like something, what you mentioned earlier, sometimes it's as simple as saying no.
Yeah.
And I've struggled with that a lot in my life, not being able to say no. When you need to or hold space for someone else without needing to fix anything. What does that quiet, kind, ordinary self-love look like for you? And is there a kind of love you think you used to avoid in the past? Whether romantic, self-love, family love, and what's shifted now?
I was clearly avoiding self-love. It was very easy for me to love others. It's still very easy. But self-love has been tough, and it's been a learning process. Yeah, developing that relationship with me, becoming my best partner. So for sure, I have avoided that self-love, in many occasions of my life, because it was easier to love someone else. I was more familiar. There was a lot of fear about being truly in touch with myself, and maybe the parts about myself that I didn't like, or that caused me some guilt or shame or pain, because we all have. But we also need to accept and welcome those parts, because they're equally important. They play a function, they play a role. So they're all part of us, and that's beautiful. Quiet love or slowing love. Mm-hmm. My main, yes, saying no when it's needed. Mm-hmm. Prioritize yourself. My main, simply saying to a friend, or someone else that, I just don't have the emotional capacity right now to have this conversation, doesn't mean that I love you less or I care less about you. I just can't do this right now. But I'm thinking of you.
Yeah.
Should we talk tomorrow? Right? The same thing as, I learned this a lot of, particularly this through friendships. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of time this urgency or guilt about being available all the time. And I've learned a lot about, holding the space for me. Doesn't mean anything, right? Mm-hmm. So it doesn't mean anything. And that's what self-love also means, as being able to know your limitations and being assertive in the way you communicate your love to people, right?
You talk about boundaries, excuse me, being a form of love, and lately I've been really holding firm to mine, really firm. It hasn't always been easy, and there's a part of me that still wrestles with guilt, especially where my family is concerned. But the more I honour those boundaries, the more I realise how necessary they are for my own for my own well-being, not just for protecting my peace, but for respecting my energy, my time, and my truth. And I'll be honest, it's been completely freeing. The guilt was there at the beginning, but again, I don't know if that's part of the patterns, that I was breaking free from them. So the guilt was there at the beginning, but now it feels really free because I have that peace and that, that calm in my life. And it's like reclaiming a part of myself that I didn't even realize I was handing over.
I love what you said, reclaiming the part of yourself that you didn't even know or realize that was there.
I was handing over.
Yeah, I think more than boundaries, it's holding space for yourself, is reclaiming, is looking after yourself, is self-love and respect. Yeah. Because I think sometimes the word boundaries sounds quite harsh.
It does, yeah.
And I think it got really into the psychological pop jargon and sometimes is misused. So
okay, that's interesting.
At least to me, feels sometimes a bit too much like, you misbehave.
Yes.
I have to punish you. And it's not that way. Life has lots of nuances as well as people. We have lots of layers. I much prefer what you said about honoring your space, your mental, your physical space, honoring your life, reclaiming your space, holding the space than boundaries, right? Mm-hmm. Because also boundaries is very subjective. What's a boundary for me might not be a boundary for you. So I think I have reflected a lot about this. And I feel much more comfortable with these terms than actually boundaries. I think everything that starts going into extremes is just
too much. Mm-hmm.
Too much. Mm-hmm. And there's also, when we talk about mental health, going back to mental health, it's great that we're having, more conversations about mental health, and there's so much content on social media, but I think we have to digest the information and take it with a pinch of salt, because sometimes, things get a little bit, carried away. Mm-hmm. And boundaries is an example, or maybe going back to trauma, it is also an example of what I call the soul pop psychology. So, but...
Tell me a wee bit more about that. What's that?
The pop psychology?
Yes. Uh-huh.
The pop psychology is when suddenly everyone is saying, as an example, that, every man they meet or mother has narcissistic traits or is a narcissistic.
Okay.
This, as when psychological terms become ultra vulgarized, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. Not everyone that, manifests or exhibits a certain behavior has narcissistic traits, right? Mm-hmm. Not everything, going back and giving another example, not every human reaction or emotion should be pathologized or given a clinical diagnosis, right? Just because you have anxious thoughts or you have anxiety doesn't mean that you're suffering from generalized anxiety, which is a clinical diagnosis. Uh-huh. So I think, once again, everything when goes into extremes, there are dangers of misusing terms of what they really mean, of maybe people self-diagnosing with something there's nothing to diagnose. It's just a normal reaction. This is how you would respond. You would respond in a situation with grief or loss or sadness or anger or anxiety. There's nothing pathological about it or nothing wrong about it that needs a pill or a diagnosis.
So it's almost
Does
like,
that make sense?
Yes, I think so. It's almost if everything needs a label.
Yes, exactly, needs a label. And I don't really, I understand the importance of labels, but I don't really like the language of labels when they become absolute. Yeah. And the boundaries is another example of the word that can become absolute.
Yeah.
And there's, you just see it this way. You just can't see it this way. And when you're able to see in life this way, a much more open window, that gives you much more possibilities to understand not only your inner world, but the outside world is much more powerful and beautiful, right? Instead of having this view,
this tunnel vision. You've spoken so beautifully about embodiment. I think that opens up something tender, the next step, which really is love. So I'm curious, do you think we fall in love with ourselves through how we care for our bodies? And is there a movement or food ritual that makes you feel most connected to yourself? And do you have a favourite snack that's basically like a hug?
Should we start with a snack? Because I'm getting hungry. For sure, my peanut butter banana sandwiches, as I call them. So what I do is that I get some rice or corn crackers. You can do it with oatcakes as well. And you smash banana and you put peanut butter and cinnamon. And that's the most delicious snack ever.
I have to try it.
My
Any
God.
rice cakes in particular? Any just a rice cake?
I like Calo brand, but Biona. But you can get Lidl cakes is absolutely fine. There's no problem with that. Yeah, yeah. They keep it to minimally processed ingredients, so that's what you should ouch for if you want to go into that. But daily routines or rituals that show self-love, exercising and moving for me is very important. As a dancer, you follow a very rigid routine. I don't know how to live without moving, without exercising, without feeling connected with my body that way. So might be super busy, but one of my priorities is always movement, right?
Okay.
So if I can't go to the gym or can't go to a class, I might do a workout on YouTube at home, or I just try to go for a walk. So that's very important for me, is movement. Really important for me is also nutritious food that feeds my soul as well. I feel that I'm eating life, the rainbow, and connection. I'm someone that, knows how to be with herself in solitude and has learned a lot about solitude, but I'm a person of connections. I'm a people's person. I really crave social interaction. So I need to be with people. I need to be with my friends, with my family, with you, meeting new people. I love meeting new people. So I think, it's something that really feeds my soul is people and get to know them. Yeah, this is such a profound subject.
You go deep.
Yeah. I don't think I fully answered to your question, but if you just recap.
Do you think
the second bit?
Do you think we all go through a heartbreak that actually teaches us the truth about what love isn't?
Maybe not necessarily a heartbreak, but for sure pain. Yeah. Right. But I think, is equally at the same time, now that I'm reflecting, it's difficult to not have a heartbreak or pain in love, because it's just part of life, isn't it? It's part of relationships. I'm not only talking about romantic relationships, I'm talking about every kind of relationship. There's heartbreak in professional relationships. There's heartbreak in friendships. There's heartbreak in family, not only in romantic relationships. Also, when we think about love, we need to think about love, right? Love is just...
And a whole...
Yes, exactly. Love is just not only romantic relationships, right? I love my friends deeply in the same way I love my family, right? As the same way I loved or would love a partner. I love them deeply. So I'll say that you might have key significant moments of your life of pain, of maybe sadness or failure. Not failure, sorry, that's not the word I wanted to say. Disappointment, loss. Doesn't have to be necessarily a heartbreak. But also this, once again, is very subjective. What a heartbreak means and how do people experience it? What does that mean? Because I felt that, I ended relationships where I felt that I moved on quite quickly. I barely felt any pain. I actually felt relieved and free. In other relationships, they were so, bloody painful. And the pain was excruciating. That's what I would call a proper heartbreak. And others, they weren't. It was fine. Like the wound, quickly. That's it. It's interesting, right? Yeah.
I think my biggest heartbreak is the estrangement I have with my family. So going back to what you said, how do I go back to not feeling guilty about, sticking to my decisions and walking away from my family dynamics without feeling like a villain?
I think that's a very common thing that people feel. Yeah. Just because we are sometimes blood related, that we should stick to some relationships and tolerate things and accept things. Or because, we are in a romantic relationship and this has been the partner of 30 or 20 years, we feel, responsible, or we feel that we should endure whatever comes, right? I'm not even talking about abuse, but what's important is it's going back to the question of what is important to you. What values are important to you? How are you preserving the dignity of your life, your self-love, your self-respect? What are you gaining from this? Is this creating value in your life? If it's not, well, maybe you should really ask that question to yourself. The guilt you will experience, guilt is such a common emotion, right? It's so important. But, when you experience guilt, ask, why am I experiencing guilt? What the guilt is about? What is the function that it's playing right now? Because guilt usually gives you the information or signals that you've done something wrong, right? Maybe that a boundary has been crossed, right?
I think for me as well, I was always, I think for the last maybe 15 years, I've started to challenge, not challenge, that's another big word,
yes, that's a great challenge, yeah.
I think I've started to question.
Question, I like that question.
I've started to question, my family dynamics. But I was seen as being difficult and causing trouble. And, so I think that is part of the guilt. I was questioning myself, am I causing trouble? Am I the villain? Am I in the wrong?
As I said, just because we are blood related, as an example, going back to family, doesn't mean that we can't make those choices. The family that you have is a family that you create, not necessarily the family that you're born with. It might sound controversial saying this. It is a challenging topic, right? But sometimes you need to make the decision that the best thing for you and your family is some sort of separation. And I've done that with my family. And listen, we have the most beautiful relationship. But I felt that if I accepted certain things, or if I'd continue the narrative, I was disabling my parents, not enabling. And I think a lot in relationships, including family relationships, we tend to enmesh with one another, right? We lose our individualities and what is important to us. And in particular, my experience with my own family, when we went through really difficult periods of illness in the family, we're getting too enmeshed, feeling the pressure of, I need to fix you. I need to repair the situation. I felt that pressure and that guilty a lot. But I've then realized that no, the best that I can do for my parents is to set them free, is allow them and give them the space to learn by themselves how to look after themselves, how to be happy, how to be fulfilled without me needing to repair or fix anything, right? It's not my responsibility, neither my duty as a daughter. And if I want to make that choice, I can make that conscious choice. I would be disabling more than enabling. And that was a tough decision because I experienced so much guilt, Shona. You know, oh, I'm such a bad daughter. But actually, that's what we needed to break patterns and, you know, family dynamics and a narrative in the family that has been coming from, you know, intergenerational. And our relationship in the end has become closer. It was already close, but has become more even powerful and more closer because we allowed and we hold the space for one another, right? Without the needing to repair or fix, without guilt, but, you know, love. This is what love is about. Love sometimes is about saying no, is about separation.
Absolutely.
Right? Is about maybe doing things differently, what we used to, what you're told to, because I think there's also this societal narrative about what it constitutes a good mother, a good father, a good daughter, a good wife, a good partner, right? So, and you can make that choice to fit in those pre-societal, predefined roles or not, or do things differently. So, but equally helps to, you know, maybe have family members or friends that are quite open and willing, you know.
Yeah, I think that's where the whole enmeshment things makes so much sense, you know, and I didn't really understand, but looking back, you know, beginning to understand what it is, I think for me as well, when I started to question things, you know, I was coming from a place of hurt, a place of pain, you know, a place of not being seen, and I didn't always deal with things in the right way. I would speak my truth, but I would speak my truth in an aggressive way. So the decision for me just now, you know, I've just been trying to let them see that I'm just trying to encourage healthier relationships. But right now, for me, I need to love them from a distance. I still love them. And it's actually, I feel that I'm grieving for them as much as I'm grieving for my nephew, you know, because...
Wow.
And I don't think anything's going to change anytime soon.
You know, sometimes there's one family member that has a very particular mission in the family dynamic. And maybe that's your mission, to change things and to, you know, write the next chapter of your family history in a different way. That's how I see it. That's how I felt a lot of times that I have, you know, I have to disrupt the system to make it better for whatever comes after me in the future generations of my family, to build a healthier narrative, a healthier family dynamic.
Okay, thank you for that, Catia. That was
Thank you so much for sharing.
So we've gone through it all: love, loss, self, soul.
It's been a great experience. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. And to wrap things up, the whole essence of Bare Frequencies is about the intersection of the arts, music, mental health, and awareness.
And we love
so
that.
I always like to end on something that we all love and share, and that is music.
Yay!
So Catia, I'd love to know, what is your all-time favourite track that gets you up to get down on the dance floor?
That's such a hard question because I love music. All right, if it's an upbeat tune, I would say I'm a big fan of 80s and beginning of 90s, so upbeat songs. So probably, I'm not sure if I'm, you know, this is I'm very forgetful in terms of names of songs and artists. Yeah, very good memory for other things, but I think it's Joy, Dreaming. And, you know, I went on a holiday with a friend, and then that song started playing, and I was like, immediately.
Yes, you were on the floor.
And this was like two weeks ago. So
oh, really?
Like,
that's amazing.
and then I told her, I've danced this to a choreography to this song. So it brought me really good memories when I used to be a dancer, because I used to dance contemporary jazz and funk. So
amazing.
It's one of the songs of me also growing up and being a dancer. So it is. And then, the last week was like joy all the time on my Spotify. So yeah, I'll choose that one.
Catia, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here with me today as my second guest. Thank you so much for your honesty, for your vulnerability, for your realness. And I hope that maybe you'll come back and join us sometime and we can dive a little even more deeper, into some different topics. But thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Yeah.